So I'm going to review the Trump v. U.S. decision of 2024. A lot of people say, well, the president has immunity for everything that he does. He could shoot a person on Fifth Avenue and that would still be okay. And that's not the case at all. So Trump v. U.S. 2024. Let's review it. A federal grand jury indicted Donald Trump on 4 counts for conduct that occurred during his presidency following the November 2020 election. The indictment alleged that after losing the election, Trump conspired to overturn it, which he did, right? He called Georgia up and said he needed to find like 1,000 votes, and then he encouraged that mob to attack the Capitol and a number of things. Stop the steal, but then later on he's going to admit that he had lost the election by a hair. Barely. I forget exactly how he said it, but basically he said he barely lost. Held under our constitutional structure of separated powers, the nature of presidential power entitles a former president to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. Preclusive means things that you can stop. So conclusive means actions that you do and carry on with. Preclusive are things that you stop, right? So his veto power would be a preclusive constitutional authority. He's entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all of his official acts. There is no immunity for unofficial acts. Now that's important because that means he doesn't get absolute immunity for anything and everything that he does. He cannot get immunity for unofficial acts. Now I wrote a list of things here. What are things that are not official behavior? What are things that presidents cannot do? Well, they can't just randomly commit crimes for no apparent reason. I suspect that you probably could say like Watergate, there was some, you got to protect the president at all costs. So you probably could try to make personal vendettas into official business, but that's not the case at all now, is it? Even Truman was going to take over the steel mills and they told him not to. So I feel like regular crimes, don't rape anybody. You can't rape, strangers or your wife. Don't assault anybody. Don't just slap a homeless man's buttocks. That's not official. That's not official behavior for a president. What'd you slap that homeless man's buttocks for? Just for funsies, for a laugh? Don't burn down people's houses for a laugh. Don't throw kittens off a bridge. Don't throw kittens off a building. Don't throw kittens off of any place, off a cliff. I saw an Israeli throw a kitten off a building. Because, that's just comedy to them. That's not official behavior. That's not official behavior and that's not protected. Don't provoke a dog and then run them over. RIP Tecumseh. Don't do drive-by shootings against innocent people. Don't do drive-by shootings against innocent, peaceful citizens. You also can't fart in the face of a diplomat, nor suck Netanyahu's dick. I guess you could probably support him with money and words, but if you try to say that, you did a reach around and a rim job on Netanyahu and you tossed his salad and you just gave him the works, you gave him a meat lover special, Donald, if he was to get convicted for that, he cannot claim presidential immunity because that's not official business. But I suppose he probably could say it was official business. Hey, how about this? Instead of giving you another $7 billion, what if I just do a reach around? This is for national security, American people. I did this for you all. And also overthrowing an illegitimate election that you lost. Overthrowing the brand new government that comes in over a legitimate election that you lost. That's not official business. And also paying off a porn star. Paying off a porn star during your campaign. You weren't a president then, so how could that be official business as a president? So that's not protected either. His authority to act necessarily stems either from an act of Congress or from the Constitution itself. Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company v. Sawyer. This is the Harry Truman. Harry Truman was going to take over the steel mills. There was a strike. There was a war, the Korean War going on, so he went to take over the steel mills, but the Supreme Court said that he wasn't allowed to do that. So your official behavior has to come from an act of Congress or the Constitution itself. When you banned paper straws, right, since everybody, how about USAID? Let's talk about some smart stuff. When you banned USAID, was that an act of Congress? Did that come from the Constitution itself, or are you just writing legislation and taking powers that you don't have? It follows that an act of Congress, either a specific one targeted at the president or a generally applicable one, may not criminalize the president's actions within his exclusive constitutional power. Neither may courts adjudicate a criminal prosecution that examines such presidential actions. The court thus concludes that the president is absolutely immune from criminal prosecution for conduct within his exclusive sphere of constitutional authority. So there's enumerated power. So he's the commander-in-chief, right? So anything that he does official business with as a commander-in-chief, well, then that it would be protected from criminal prosecution. The scope of his exclusive constitutional authority do not extend to conduct in areas where his authority is shared with Congress. So sometimes powers are by Congress. So if Congress has exclusive powers, say over the post office, and he tries to shut down the post offices, then that's not official business that of the power that the president has. So he can only do, powers that is given to him by the Constitution, powers that an act of Congress, federal laws allow him to do. But if it's official business that is not consistent with the Constitution, that's illegal. And of course, if he does any crime when it has nothing to do with official business, like paying off a porn star while during the campaign, that has nothing to do with official business whatsoever, goddamned ever. In Fitzgerald, for instance, the court concluded that a former president is entitled to absolute immunity from damages liability for acts within the outer perimeter of his official responsibility. That was Nixon v. Fitzgerald. Here's another quote. During the treason trial of former Vice President Aaron Burr, for instance, Chief Justice Marshall rejected President Thomas Jefferson's claim that the president could not be subjected to a subpoena. I can't be subjected to a subpoena. I am Thomas Jefferson. I am the President of America. You're not allowed to issue me a subpoena. And when a subpoena issued to President Richard Nixon, the court rejected his claim of absolute privilege. So, you can give the president a subpoena, and even if he's not on trial, if he's supposed to testify, then he needs to testify. A subpoena was issued to Nixon. They rejected it in U.S. v. Nixon. What was that? 1972, 74? Let's see here. Unofficial conduct. So that concern does not support immunity for unofficial conduct. This is from a Clinton case. The separation of powers does not bar a prosecution predicated on the president's unofficial acts. So what was Clinton? Was that have to do with Monica? The first step in deciding whether a former president is entitled to immunity from a particular prosecution is to distinguish his official from his unofficial actions. In this case, no court thus far has drawn that distinction in general or with respect to the conduct alleged in particular. So they're saying that official behavior you get immunity, but unofficial behavior you do not. And then they're like, well, what's the definition of official versus unofficial? Well, we haven't adjudicated that. We haven't defined official and unofficial. Not yet. The indictment's allegations that Trump attempted to pressure the vice president to take particular acts in connection with his role at the certification proceeding thus involve official conduct. This is incredible. So Donald tried to get Mike Pence to not certify the election, and Mike Pence was like, but the Constitution says I'm supposed to. I'm just a chair. I'm not even supposed to. But they said somehow that was official business. So he gets presumptive immunity from prosecution for trying to pressure his vice president to cheat the American people out of the fair election. The indictment alleges that Trump and his co-conspirators attempted to convince certain state officials that election fraud had tainted the popular vote count in their states, and thus electoral votes for Trump's opponent needed to be changed to electoral votes for Trump. As the government sees it, however, Trump can point to no plausible source of authority enabling the president to take such actions. I bet you that Donald can't point to most of the times, most of his behavior, most of his actions some sort of constitutional authority. Hey, why did you just do that? Because I felt like it. Enduring separation of power principles guide our decision in this case. The president enjoys no immunity for his unofficial acts, and not everything that the president does is official. The president is not above the law. He's not a king. Resistance to tyranny is obedience to God. We're supposed to be a nation of laws, not a nation of men. But under our system of separated powers, the president may not be prosecuted for exercising his core constitutional powers. And so that was backed up by John Roberts. Hi there, guys. I'm John Roberts. I got these eyes, these blue eyes. I got this parted hair, and I know what I'm talking about. So he's the chief, right? And then Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and then Barrett. They all joined except as to part 3. So Barrett said something like where she doesn't totally agree. So that's interesting. I've only read this opinion up to 17 pages. So this isn't a full analysis of the entire opinion. Maybe I'll do it later. Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson, they all filed a joint dissenting opinion. And then Jackson filed a dissenting opinion on her own. So let's see, 10, 11, here's another one. The D.C. Court Circuit affirmed, citing Marbury v. Madison, 1 Cranch, 137, 1803, the court distinguished between two kinds of official acts, discretionary and ministerial. So if it's ministerial, it's okay, but discretionary is not. It observed that although discretionary acts are only politically examinable, the judiciary has the power to hear cases involving ministerial acts that an officer is directed to perform by the legislature. Ibid, quoting Marbury, 1 Cranch at 166. So no, actually, discretionary official acts is fine. Off the cuff, I gave Netanyahu, the best damn reach around ever. I'm trying to get peace in the Middle East. I need to do a 2-state solution. He needs to integrate the Palestinian people. He needs to give them the right to vote. They have not been treating the Palestinians since 1948, and hell, was it 2,000 or 3,000 years? I mean, the Israelites were fighting the Canaanites, and then they were fighting the Philistines. They keep on killing the Palestinians, but the Palestinians are a people of resistance. So ministerial, this is such a weird distinction. So what's official, what's unofficial, we don't know. But when it comes to official power, ministerial official power, we can judge that, but discretionary power, there's expressly enumerated powers in the Constitution. So when it comes to when it's time for revolution, I feel like when they take all the power away from the Constitution, they take away the rule of law, they take away our freedoms, they take away the 3 branches of government, they take away the enumerated power, federalism, bicameralism. When they take away all the powers of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the parties before us do not dispute that a former president can be subject to criminal prosecution for unofficial acts committed while in office. They also agree that some of the conduct described in the indictment includes actions taken by Trump in his unofficial capacity. So they admit that there were some unofficial things that Donald Trump had done. At least with respect to the president's exercise of his core constitutional powers, this immunity must be absolute. Article 2 of the Constitution provides that the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. The president's duties are of an unrivaled gravity and breadth. Trump v. Vance, 2020. So what are the official powers of the president? They include, for instance, commanding the armed forces of the U.S., granting reprieves and pardons for offenses against the U.S., right? People are getting mad at Joe Biden for giving the pardon to, Hunter. But this decision, that's an official act of the president. And shouldn't you protect your family? Shouldn't you protect your son or daughter? And so That's an official thing. That's an official thing. And appointing public ministers and consuls, the justices of this court and officers, I could actually see an argument to be made that even things that look like official business, people could say, well, that was unofficial. No, that was just a personal thing. But then the legacy of Biden, of his self, would matter. Because if you could just keep on pointing to, well, Hunter's still in jail, and that could be a, constant point of humiliation. So, I mean, aren't you supposed to protect the office of the presidency? I don't know. I could see an argument being made both ways. But it's just incredible that, whatever. So, some people want to say that it's full-on presidential immunity. I think you should think of it as mostly immunity. You get mostly immunity for most of the official acts that you do. But, there's notable exceptions. Unofficial acts are not protected, and then even official acts, we just read ministerial, if it butts up against the power of the courts or the legislature. Executive orders, that's writing legislature, so that's writing laws. I feel like an executive order shouldn't be upheld unless the legislature assents to it, unless they agree to it. Every executive order should be put to Congress for them to vote up or down. So the official powers, he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He can grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the U.S. He can appoint public ministers and consuls, justices of this court, and officers of the U.S. He has also important foreign relation responsibilities, making treaties, appointing ambassadors, recognizing foreign governments, meeting foreign leaders, overseeing international diplomacy and intelligence gathering, and managing matters related to terrorism, trade, and immigration. See Section 2 and 3. Domestically, he must take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and he bears responsibility for the actions of the many departments and agencies within the executive branch. He also plays a role in lawmaking by recommending to Congress the measures he thinks wise and signing or vetoing the bills Congress passes. No matter the context, the president's authority to act necessarily stems either from an act of Congress or from the Constitution itself. Youngstown. If the president claims authority to act but in fact exercises mere individual will and authority without law, the courts may say so. Youngstown. In Youngstown, for instance, we held that President Truman had exceeded his constitutional authority when he seized most of the nation's steel mills. The Constitution, for example, vests the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States in the president. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1. During and after the Civil War, President Lincoln offered a full pardon with restoration of property rights to anyone who had engaged in the rebellion but agreed to take an oath of allegiance to the Union. United States v. Klein. So what's the problem with that? During and after the Civil War, Lincoln offered a full pardon with restoration of property rights to anyone who had engaged in the rebellion but agreed to take an oath of allegiance to the Union. Before, during, and after the Civil War, Lincoln was only alive for a week after the Civil War. So how many pardons do you think he was issuing? Now they're going to question this later on. They're going to say that the president's authority to pardon, in other words, is conclusive and preclusive, disabling the Congress from acting upon the subject. There is a problem with whether or not he can pardon the property when it comes to property. He offered a full pardon with restoration of property rights to anyone engaged in the rebellion. So another stupid argument. As Justice Robert Jackson recognized in Youngstown, the president sometimes acts pursuant to an express or implied authorization of Congress, or in a zone of twilight where he and Congress may have concurrent authority. So those are all the notes that I have so far. Trump v. U.S. 2024. Official acts have immunity from criminal prosecutions, but not unofficial acts. And then there's some distinction between discretionary and ministerial, which discretionary is okay, but ministerial can be held to review, because I think that even official acts that claw into the authority of the Congress, they have official powers as well. So if the president tries to take power away from Congress, the legislative branch, if he tries to write the rules, if he tries to write the laws, the problem with that is that he's going to become a tyrant. And so when they take away our when they take away elections, federalism, bicameralism, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the rule of law, enumerated powers, and the three branches of government, when they take those things away from us, then that's all the powers of the Constitution, the powers to stop tyranny that the Constitution had given us. And when dictatorship becomes fact, then revolution becomes duty.